stone of Hagrid's, and that is the scene where he is dragging this big 4-metre Christmas tree through the Hogwarts grounds to be put up in the Great Hall and adorned with Christmas decorations, just like you may have seen as you came through the hall earlier. Now, this tree behind me has been lovingly recreated by the incredible props team, but the costume just to the side of it is the original costume, which has been returned just for you all to see as part of our Hogwarts in the Snow feature today. Now, while many of you may know that Hagrid was played by the late great Robbie Coltrane, it may come as a surprise to learn that this costume was not his, and he never wore it even once. And that was because while Robbie was a tall man, standing at 6'2", he was not quite tall enough to play a half-giant who was standing at 7'6". So we had to enlist the help of ex-England rugby player Martin Bayfield, who stood at a whopping 6'10". Although many of you who can do that maths in your head may realise that there is still a big discrepancy between 6'10" and 7'6". And so that is where the costume comes in. We gave him these wonderful stilted boots, a big padded jacket, and a rather iconic animatronic head to fit on top. So, the question that you must all be thinking about is how can we tell the difference between Robbie on the screen and Martin playing Robbie on the screen? And the answer is actually quite a simple one. Any shot that was close up of Hagrid, we wanted to show Robbie's incredible acting talent and his incredible emotional range. So that would be played by Robbie himself. And we even had some camera trickery techniques that we could use to make that happen as much as possible. It was only the scenes where Hagrid was directly compared in height, for example, further away shots, where we'd be using Martin Bayfield so that we could get that correct height for an actual half-giant compared to humans. So, the Creatures Effect department was tasked with creating a head in the perfect likeness of Robbie Coltrane as Hagrid. And to do that, they created a mask of Martin Bayfield, and they then built up silicone around that to create our lovely Hagrid head. Now, this one actually moves, but for the first 2 films, it didn't move at all, which was rather unnerving for everybody involved because you'd be looking at the wonderful Hagrid that everybody knows and loves, and you would get nothing in return. It would be a completely blank and emotionless stare, which was quite unnerving. So, reasonably enough, for the 3rd film, Alfonso Cuarón, who was the director, commissioned the Creatures Effects team to create a head that would move, so that we could have a more animated version of Hagrid. And that is something I would like to demonstrate for you today. So I'm going to get my camera ready. You're welcome to get your cameras ready as well, as we hear some of Hagrid's iconic lines.
You're a wizard, Harry.
I shouldn't have said that. I should not have said that.
It's not every day your young man turns 11 now, is it?
And finally,
Martin, Harry, you wouldn't be talking about me now, would you?
of course we're talking about you, Hagrid. This whole speech is in your honour. So, the very final question that you must be so curious to find the answer to is, in such a big and heavy costume, walking around under the studio lights, how did Martin Bayfield stay cool? And that is a question that the filmmakers had predicted as well. So when they built that big animatronic head, they actually built in fans to keep his face cool, and within the rest of the costume we have piping that would pump cold water around his body, which doesn't sound most pleasant, but it managed to keep him cool, and it managed to stop him from collapsing and squashing any children, which is quite good for health and safety reasons. But that is how we brought to life the adorable character of Hagrid. It was more than just one man's performance, it was many moving pieces spliced together to create a rather iconic character. Just to your right, we have Hagrid's hut, the big version rather than the little version. This was the one that Martin Bayfield would use. And just around the corner, you'll have a little photo opportunity using a technique of what we call forced perspective, which is one of the examples of how we could have Robbie in a scene but make him look larger just by using some clever trickery. So do have a go at that when you head around the corner. But thank you so much for listening, everybody. My name is Amelia, and I hope you have a truly